It looks as if Spider-Man 2 on the PS5 is having a number of issues upon release. I'm hearing reports that like there's an installation problem where the game isn't playable for a lot of people because a patch isn't downloading correctly. I'm seeing people complain about wokeness. I'm seeing people complain about the declining quality from the first game in general. And then there are people like me who would never ever support the game to begin with because it has Miles Morales, right? Who is not Spider-Man, right? When I buy a Spider-Man game, I want to play as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, not some like wannabe like cosplayer that like the self-insert character for the writers. Okay, like I want Peter Parker in my Spider-Man game. So it's interesting to see like kind of the narrative around Spider-Man 2 fall apart because for the past couple of months, people were hyping this up as the next major release for PlayStation. This was going to be the big thing. This was going to stomp Mario. This was going to be like a huge deal. But like as the months grow on, dragged on, as we begin to learn more and more about it, as we begin to see like get those pre-order numbers in. Mario was outselling it on Amazon. When we saw those review scores, Mario outperformed it. When we saw like the games themselves, like it was pretty obvious, like to everyone, that wasn't a complete snoy that Mario was the far superior game. But I had plenty of people in my comments section, in my community posts, like trying to tell me, no, Spider-Man is better. It's open world. Mario's just a 2D platformer. It's not even a major release for Nintendo. They're gearing up for Switch 2 because they know they'll never be able to outperform Spider-Man. It led me down this rabbit hole of like research. Realizing that like Mario is actually a bigger brand than Spider-Man. Realizing that like we've seen a huge decline in sales over Spider-Man over the past several years. Like realizing that like the Mario movie is better than Spider-Man. It did far better than any Spider-Man movie. Realizing that like the people who are praising Spider-Man are just hopping on a bandwagon and have no real inclination to like play video games at all. Like it's kind of like the Baldur's Gate 3 thing again, where like you just have a bunch of people trying to like meme this game into being successful. Like, oh, if we just like type Baldur's Gate 3 onto Twitter over and over again, that'll create the illusion that the game is popular and talked about, right? It reminded me a lot of that. Like, Spider-Man is basically like the PlayStation equivalent of Starfield, right? A game that has a ton of problems that very few people are talking about purely because it's an exclusive, right? Like the issue with Baldur's Gate 3 is that it's a PC exclusive. The issue with Starfield is that it's a Microsoft exclusive. The issue with Spider-Man is that it's a PlayStation exclusive. You have all of these games that are exclusive to one or two platforms, right? You have these games that are just religiously defended by certain people who simply will not admit their flaws at all, right? Like all you had to do to realize there was something up with Spider-Man 2 was ask yourself, how exactly is this game better than the Arkham trilogy? Right? Like, wouldn't that be its primary competitor? Like the game you would compare Spider-Man against? Like, is it better than the Batman games? How does it innovate? What does it do? Like, does it use the rogue gallery? Is it like bringing back classic voice actors? Is it like following like some famous comic plot line? Like, is it no? Like when you compare the two, like it's obvious to anyone who's like remotely familiar with either brand is that like the Arkham trilogy had a much better, well, at least the first game, the Arkham trilogy, the Arkham Asylum was a far better received Batman game than Spider-Man PS4 was as a Spider-Man game. Arkham invented like its own combat system. It incorporated stealth elements. It incorporated lots of classic Batman villains in interesting ways, reasonably interesting ways. It had a reasonably good plot. It had voice actors from the animated series. Like it had like all this stuff that got people excited for it. And it's not the best game in the world. It's a solid 7 out of 10, but like that's far better than what Spider-Man came up with. Why exactly should I get excited for Spider-Man other than the fact like, ooh, it's Spider-Man? Like nobody has been able to justify that to me. Nobody has been able to justify Miles Morales' presence or like all the QTEs, or like the fact that the combat is like a straight ripoff of Arkham, right? Nobody's been able to justify that. Nobody has been able to tell me why this game is worth getting excited for. And in a lot of ways, it's like worse than Starfield in that regard. It's worse than Baldur's Gate 3 because Spider-Man, being a generic superhero, has more stiff competition. Like when you look at Starfield, you're just like, oh, you can just okay, it's an RPG where you explore the stars. Okay, that might be interesting. That might be fun. You get to upgrade your ship or whatever. You get to explore all these planets. Okay, that might be interesting. You look at Baldur's Gate 3. Oh, it's a hentai game. Okay, like maybe if I don't want to play a game and I want to just like have some D&D like orgies with like Shadowheart and like her boyfriend, like I'll play Baldur's Gate 3, right? Like if I can understand why certain people might be attracted to these games, even if the games aren't good, right? But with Spider-Man, like there really is no justification for it, right? It's basically just, oh, it's Spider-Man, right? Like it's Spider-Man. Like okay, but what's the gameplay like? It's Spider-Man, but okay, what's the story like? Is it written by actual? Oh, it's Spider-Man. Okay, but is it better than the Arkham? It's Spider-Man. Like over and over and over again, all right? And it was so embarrassing. I was very frustrated about it, but like the thing is, I could tell the game wasn't going to be successful, right? I knew this was going to be a bomb. I knew it was going to fall by the wayside. I knew it wasn't going to win Game of the Year. I knew it probably wasn't even going to get nominated. I knew there was this thing where like this was going to be like, the PlayStation exclusive to Starfield, the PlayStation exclusive to Baldur's Gate 3, where like it's just talked about pre-release because like non-Nintendo gamers have nothing else, right? Like it is that kind of game. It is the hi-fi rush of like the second half of the year, right? Like, oh, it's a game of the year contender because it has Spider-Man. Like that's all you got, right? Like it's just it's embarrassing, like considering all like the sheer like crazy games I myself have gotten this year, like playing Shin Megami Tensei 5, picking that up again. Like it's been like it's crazy seeing people like try it and hype up Spider-Man like it's like 2004 all over again. 20 years, right? 20 years ago, like you dipshits tried to convince me to well, actually you did convince me to buy Spider-Man 2 on the GameCube because you told me, "Oh, it's one of the best open worlds ever." Like your web realistically grabs onto buildings and it has one of the, it's so much fun. Like I bought the game, it has like repetitive mission structures. The plot's not that good. The movement and momentum is fine. Like it's not the worst experience in the world, but like you don't understand what it was like playing that game. Having it hyped as being like the big release of that summer, and then like slowly realizing that like it's not that great. You know, whatever positive aspects it has, it's not even the best Spider-Man game I own. Like the N64 one is still better. So like I in a lot of ways like I don't even think Spider-Man PS4 is better than that. Like it's just the N64 one is still the best. Yeah. That is like the Spider-Man equivalent of like the Arkham games. The Spider-Man 1 and I'm sure the PS1 sequel was actually pretty solid, right? Like I love that game. I wish I could play the sequel, but like yeah, I'm so disappointed in seeing what like gamers have devolved into in recent years. I start talking about like how excited I am for Mario Wonder, and all anyone does is try to convince me that like, oh, Spider-Man is going to be bigger than it. It's going to be the game of the year. No, it's not going to happen. Game of the year right now is a toss-up between Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? There's really no other competition for this, right? Like, I suppose, it's possible that like it might split the vote between Nintendo fans, and we'll have this issue where like something that doesn't deserve to win gets Game of the Year nomination, but it won't mean anything. Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder are going to be popular for a long time, whereas like Starfield or whatever is going to fall off the wayside very quickly. It's fallen off the wayside already. It's kind of embarrassing how quickly Starfield has become irrelevant, and Spider-Man, I think, is more of the same. Like I do feel like when it comes to these, like the era where you could just like put a superhero into an open world game and like sell millions of copies is like over. Okay, like it's not just about the fact it's not high quality anymore, right? Like the issue is that traditionally you could put a superhero in an open world and like get millions of sales and all these awards and all this hype, but like it's 2024. Like it's 2023, right? Not 2024 yet. Like I'm thinking way ahead of the game. It's 2023. It is the current year. Okay. People aren't impressed by Spider-Man in realistically rendered New York anymore, right? We've been getting this for 20 years. Give us something new, right? Super Mario Bros. Wonder delivered that in spades. It is remarkable how a plumber from New York has accomplished more in the past 40 years than Spider-Man has in his entire legacy, right? Mario has done more for New York than Spider-Man has in his entire career.